All right, guys, thanks for being out here. Obviously, a great way to start the season with a home opening win. Learned a lot from that game. Some positives and some things to be fixed for sure, like I told you guys post-game. But, pleased with the effort. I thought it was great. The will and the mindset and the approach all week had been there. But just like anything, we turned the page and ready for an exciting game versus Arkansas State, the 62nd game of this rivalry. And we know how important it is. 2 years ago when we traveled down to Jonesboro, it was a shootout, and last year we had to come from behind, win. But look, it's our focus is now straight ahead on the Red Wolves. Obviously, I want to look back though, and I do want to reflect. Our student section was absolutely phenomenal for our home opener. They were great. Can't wait to see all those students tonight at the radio show at Brookhaven. But want to give them credit and to the rest of our fans. But again, our focus from our players and our staff standpoint is 100% on the Red Wolves, and excited for this rivalry game to continue.
Ryan, Rock Taylor was an athlete that people were kind of expecting to take a leap this year and to see what he was able to do on Saturday. How much of a confidence boost can that be for him to start the year off the way he did?
Yeah, Rock's a guy that's been a part of our program. That even last year he even wondered, hey, what's my role looking like? Within the mix of a bunch of guys that were catching footballs, and when Rock. Really, this past spring, I knew he was going to have a special season. He works really hard. He cares about it. He cares about this university, and it's exciting to see him be able to get those catches in the first game, right? Because so much of that is confidence, right? A guy like Demir Blankumsey had success at Toledo and comes here, and we knew he'd have success. But a guy like Rock Taylor hasn't been able to show it game in and game out. For him to be able to start the first game like that, it's huge for his confidence, and we're expecting great things from him the rest of the season.
Ryan, we didn't see a lot of the vertical passing game. You were successful with short passes, bubble screens, and the running game. Were you guys holding some stuff back, or what was the reason why there wasn't as much downfield passing?
Yeah, a lot of it dictates what they're going to give to you. If they're going to play top down on some of that stuff. We also thought that part of that would be the vertical, if you will, the horizontal passing game with the bubbles and screens, taking what they could, putting our ball in our athletes' hands in space, and I thought it's one of those things we had to do based off what they were giving us. It's teams that had watched us in the past. We're not a big bubble screen team, but I thought that was something that we wanted to do. Plus, there's a lot of unknowns. They jumped into a defense that, like I've told you guys, I even studied Liberty film 2018, 2019 from where the defense coordinator had been before. Their D-line coach is at Western Kentucky. So you're just trying to study a bunch of different things to your game plan. If the vertical shots are there, we'll take them at any time, but it didn't seem to present itself as well. I think it worked okay in our favor.
How much did it irk you to lose the turnover battle?
It sick to my stomach. I mean, the turnovers are everything in college football. And we, even talking to Willow pregame, right, like the keys to victory are to own the football, and that will never change. And we did a poor job, and it's very, very disappointing, obviously, especially when you're turning it into points for them. Our defense did a fantastic job, in essence, shutting them out. And we gave them 2 scores based off of turnovers. It makes you sick to your stomach. It's unacceptable. It's going to be a long season if we continue to do things of that manner, so we've got to find a way to get it cleaned.
Last week you said you're excited just to have a game film to actually look at. So when you went back and looked at the game film, where did you see that maybe was surprised?
Yeah, no, look, I thought the passion and the energy were there, and I don't ever doubt that with this, but there was things to be cleaned up. And after the game, I think you get some of those, and I hate to use the term game one, but like there's some of those fundamentals weren't there. Maybe a guy taking a step instead of taking a 6-inch vertical step, took a 12-inch flat step, and maybe that made a difference in a missed block. You talked about some of the guys just not exactly doing what they're capable of, what they showed. You get 1,000 reps of doing something over and over an individual, and then you expect it, the 1,001st rep to show up on game day, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think when you can go back and watch and say, hey, here's where it's not showing up, the young men have an understanding as well. And even when we met with him yesterday, it was a coach meet coach mentality. Hey, where are we here? And maybe it was a guy, maybe Jeff Canton wasn't in on the series, but hey, listen, we're talking to this individual, make sure you're getting this coaching point. I thought the communication from the guys was fantastic all night on the field amongst themselves. That first game, you always wonder how are they going to communicate. And that offense, defense, and special teams was great. And then when they came to the sideline, having an understanding and be able to explain back to the coach, hey, here's what I saw, here's what we thought about. I think that's part of also having a little bit more of a mature team.
Coach, in the past, this team has not been great on the road. And, I know each season is new. So what can you do different to be dominant early this season to set the tone going forward?
Yeah, well, we got to go out there, and it's going to be being able to handle our business. And I think that's teams that win on the road don't shoot themselves in the foot. And, going back earlier to Matt's question is we have to go play clean football. That gives you a chance because now that you're on the road, it's another disadvantage. So if you go out there and you have self-inflicted wounds, it's going to be a long game on Saturday, and it's going to be a long season for us. So go out there and start off the right way, find a way to get a lead, and like we always talked about, play 4 quarters football and then find a better way to finish. And 2 years ago when we went down to Jonesboro, we had a nice lead. Calvin Austin had a huge game. Brandon Thomas had a huge game. And they came storming back in the 4th quarter, and it became a shootout, much closer than either of us wanted. You look at last year, right? We had to come from behind to win. But all road games are you got to be focused. We will stay here in Memphis and then bus over the day of the game, so we won't be staying in Jonesboro. So that will help a little bit, the familiarity with the team hotel and a little bit of a pregame routine. But excited. It's going to be a great environment. I also expect to see a lot of our fans there, which is going to be huge for us.
After you looked at the film, Ryan, along the lines of blocking, how did your O-line grade out?
They did okay. I'm always going to be really hard on that group. They did some good things. Pleased with obviously the way we were able to run the ball and pass protect for the most part, but still too many shots on the quarterback. I thought Seth took too many hits, unnecessary hits. And then, in the run game, there's things that could have been cleaned up for sure. So, it certainly wasn't their best performance. They know. Every single one of them to a T said, man, I got to be better. And that's what I appreciate about that group is they understand what it takes. So it was just an average performance by the offensive line, and they have higher expectations for themselves, and so do we also.
Will that group stay as the starting group?
For now, yes. But they know that they're getting challenged every single day. And I can't wait to get out on the practice field tomorrow and get after them a little bit.
Sorry, what is the significance of this rivalry for the program?
Yeah, I think proximity is a huge thing. I'm one of those that, as I've told you guys every time I have the opportunity to come up here and speak in front of you guys, the history of our Memphis football program means a lot to me. I don't just look at it as just checking a box as a head coach here. I understand, I appreciate the history of our program and that rivalry, what it's meant to so many former players and fans. And so I think, the proximity of being able to go down there, and especially having our fans be able to go, it's huge. But we don't treat this game any different than our last week or the next one. But it's the next one. We're excited about it, and it's important. But, we won't treat it any differently. But quite excited to get out there. And we know the type of atmosphere it's going to be. They're going to have a great crowd. They got a beautiful stadium. And it's the opportunity to also, like I said, it's easy for our fans to get to, so expect to see a lot of them there as well.
In week 1, on a 42-point win, how much in your mind as a coach in terms of play calling and stuff do you say, like, I don't want to put too much on film if I don't have to? Yeah,
going back to kind of Gaston's question, how much do we hide? I mean, we really didn't hide much. I mean, you got to be smart. You're going to put out there what you can, but there's so many unknowns. And so what we didn't want to go out first game and show 1,000 formations and us line up to things we didn't know. No differently than defense. That we were studying an offense. So we really, we were studying the offense corner from where he'd been at the previous stop. So, I think part of that is just trying to figure out, okay, what can we go out and really function at a high capability? What can we do and go out there and get our guys lined up to more than anything? So we didn't hide a whole lot. What you see is what you get. I think it's going to be gives you a kind of an understanding. Now, obviously, if we're playing a triple option offense, it's going to look a little bit different from us defensively. If we're playing a team that's spread them out offensively with a tempo, then we're going to be looking a little bit different defensively. So week by week, obviously based off of the opponent, but I think we put our cards out there on the table and went and played ball. I don't think every week it's our job to out scheme our opponent and come up with new game plans. But I think at least it gave you kind of a taste of, hey, this is the 2023 Memphis football program in all 3 phases.
And using the running back, I mean, Watson in the receiving game, it worked well for you guys. Looking at the talent you have, how much of that do you think can not necessarily be a staple, but be a part of the offense in that way?
It has to be, and I think when we've looked at the successful offenses we've had over here the last few years, and even in my history here, the running backs have been heavily involved in all aspects, especially in the passing game. I think it gives you some mismatches, some different things you can do. And then, like I said, even the post-game press conferences, you don't ever want to have a running back, hey, this guy's just a first and second down guy, or this guy's just a third down guy. And be able to have some running backs that can, handled their business and all 3 downs is huge. And I think that those guys all showed that they could do that Saturday night, and we're going to need that moving forward.
I know you have a Tall State team that really got embarrassed last week. How do you prepare your guys to face a team that may be coming out a bit more emotionally fired up than maybe usually?
Yeah, we're going to get everything they have. Coach Jones has done a fantastic job. He's won everywhere he's been. And so we know we're going to get their best shot. Like I said last week, it's the next game, so it's the most important. Look, they also played a very tough Oklahoma team in Norman, so it'd be a battle for anybody that lined up against them. They're one of the best teams in the country. And so we understand that they're going to come back, and rightfully so. They've got a chip on their shoulder at Arkansas State, and they'll be pissed off, and they're going to want us everything we got. And it's going to be a heavyweight fight. We're looking forward to that, but we got to go handle our business. It starts with a great week of practice.
When you look at their performance from last week, look at their from Arkansas State, they had a really bad experience. Do you expect that they're going to clean up those things, or are there still a lot of them that you can take?
Yeah, there's a lot you can take. I mean, you sit there and you see some of the things they do. You watch. They brought in a transfer quarterback from Colorado that's a veteran that's done some good things. Cross, the running back number 2, he's actually a kid we recruited out of high school that originally went to a Power 5 school that's back. They have a very, very experienced secondary. So you sit there and you watch. They got 2 defensive ends, from Memphis that are starting for them. So some familiarity with them, and we know that they're going to be able to clean things up just like we've got to clean things up as well. They'll be prepared. You take as much as you can from that game. Obviously, you study previous years and try to get different things. But every year in college football, what's going to be so different is every year is a new team, right? I mean, people are going to be watching us from last year and try to get a feel, but we're a new team as well, not only from personnel, but some of the stuff we're doing schematically. So they'll get it cleaned up, hopefully not too much, but we know that they're going to, that's why they get paid, and that's why they practice as well, so they can go out there and give us their best shot as well.
Did you come out of that game healthy?
In the post-game press conference, it seemed like he's really taken Sutton under his wing, and Sutton was saying that they're roommates and that he'll go into Blake's room and ask him questions about film and whatnot. When you've got a new guy coming in that not only is producing for you on the field, but taking one of your younger, talented guys under his wing, I mean, how thrilled does that make you as a coach?
Yeah, it speaks well for the culture, and it speaks well for the young men. I even told you guys post-game, like, anybody ever asks, the coaches use the word, culture all the damn time. What's our culture? It's our players. It's our student athletes, right? Are they doing what they're supposed to when they're supposed to do it? And Blake Watson's a perfect example. You're talking about a 23-year-old running back that is splitting a lot of time right now with a 19-year-old, but he is doing everything he can to teach him and show him the ropes. And it's not just about football to those two, right? They're building a bond, a relationship, probably talking about life skills, talking about schoolwork, and all those things. Those are instrumental in both of their success in life. But, man, it warms your heart to see, Blake taking Sutton under his wings. And I think you're going to see that throughout our program, guys that really care about each other. And with the different faces that come in college football, I talked about the camaraderie amongst this team. It's a close-knit team, and that's hard to do because some of these guys have only been here, almost a month, and some of these guys have been here 5 years. But quite pleased with that, and hopefully that continues throughout the season.
Ryan, did you come out of the game relatively healthy? I know Drake got banged up a little bit. You didn't play Ducker or Skates. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I think we came out to be determined on Kobe Drake, and then Skates and Ducker are day to day. That's we'll know more as a season with this being an off day. Hopefully I'll have more answers as the week rolls on. But other than that, it felt like we came out relatively healthy. We were limited on defensive snaps. A lot of those guys, I think the most snaps any one of our defense players played was maybe 32 or 33 plays. So that's a positive. Hopefully they're a little bit fresher. And then, offensively, I think we're okay. And then some of the special teams guys, they got a different mix. But I think from a health standpoint, we're where we need to be. But obviously this week will determine a lot.
Who's your punt returner if Kobe can't go?
Probably Demir Blankumsey. He got the last 2 at the end of the game.
That pick 6 was the first opportunity for your veteran quarterback to kind of set the tone on the sideline when something like that happened. How did you feel Sept responded on the sideline after that?
He was the first. I mean, some of these. It's easy for an 18 to 23-year-old a lot of people in society to point the finger at somebody else. He sat there and said, "Shame on me. It's my fault. I'll get it. I'll get us back." It went. In fact, after that, I don't know if you guys noticed, he actually sat amongst the wide receivers. He knew it. He's not going to sit there. He can blame me. I'll take the blame. But other than that, I mean, he's not going to blame anybody else. 1,000% mistake that he could get fixed. The offensive line could have probably protected a little bit better on one of those things. But it just shows part of his leadership and growth that we've talked about all offseason, where Seth stands, and unacceptable, and we can't allow it to happen, and he knew it, and shoot, if anything, at least go make the darn tackle. But, it does show his growth and maturity, because a lot of young quarterbacks go and pout and go hide, and he owned it and said, hey, I got to be better.
Speaking of newcomers, Andres Fox is the name that we didn't kind of snuck up on us in the 2 deep. What did you think about his game? Is that kind of what you've seen throughout this entire fall camp that made you say this guy deserves some playing time?
Yeah, so you look at Jalen Allen's position, and Jalen Allen averaged over 80 plays a game just at that stand-up outside position that we call our buck. And, we wanted to keep Jalen fresh in the fourth quarter, rush the quarterback and do those things. And Andres Fox was a young man that we were able to get in the portal. Start off at Stanford, of all places, even though he's from the state of Alabama, and able to bring him back down in the South. And, throughout camp, we were able to see some explosion, and he's a guy that we didn't see all spring, so you really didn't know what you get. Good-looking young man, but you were able to see some of the explosiveness, and I thought that was a guy that could go out and help us. So if you watch some of the game, he was going in a lot on third downs, to help rush the quarterback, and obviously you guys got to see he's got some capabilities and abilities to help us on defense up front. So it's good when you can get a rotation. I've kind of talked all offseason about having some depth, and that's one of the pieces to the puzzle we're able to add, and excited Andreas is here.
Speaking of the 2 deep, I'm just curious on this. You said Bethune started quarterback that wasn't on their 2 deep. Is that against the code?
No, look, things happen. I talked to the head coach prior to the game, and look, it's part of it. They had 3 guys that they all thought were capable of it. Thank goodness it didn't affect us, even though I did not study Simmons' film as much. I did know him because he was at East Carolina. He's a Jacksonville guy, so I remember his high school film pretty vividly and what he was capable of doing. But it was part of it, and look, I don't hold any grudges because of that. I'm sure we've made mistakes, by oversight on my fault, by just saying, hey, that. I was also part of a coaching staff that in the NFL you're required to turn in your report, and we had Brett Favre listed as out. And for the first time in the history of injury reports, Brett Favre woke up the morning of a game. We were playing Chicago Bears Sunday Night Football. He woke up that Sunday morning and said, I'm playing the game. We're like, Brett, you haven't practiced all week. We've listed you as out. We can't do that. And that was probably against the code. And sure enough, he ended up starting the game. So I can't be pointing the finger when I've been part of one of those debacles prior.
When you look at the way the defense played, I don't know if you looked at the stats, but you've got the number 1 defense in the country right now. Yards allowed. But just,
can we keep that? That'd be great.
yeah, obviously, like it's kind of a weird quirk because the offense allowed more points than the defense, right? But how happy are you with the way the defense played? And they kept them over 100 yards in the whole game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the opponent. Anytime you have the ability to hold a team in college football this day and age with the way it goes with offenses, under 100 yards is huge. And to get us shut out, you're right. I mean, our offense gave up more points than our defense. I don't want to say that too often, but I'm fine. If our defense can continue to hold them to 0 points, we'll figure this thing out somehow or another. But it's hard to do, and I'm pleased with their efforts. And I think, you guys got to see a number of different faces go out there, and I think that's going to help us in the long run. But new week, new opponent, there's going to be new challenges, and they know that just as well. And I walked into that team meeting, and I said, that wasn't good enough. And I'm sure the common person said, Coach, come on, man, they held them 91 yards and 0 points. No, it wasn't. You go back and watch the film, there's things to be fixed. And that's what I appreciate about that group on that side of the ball. They're hungry. They said, absolutely, we're going to go out and how can we continue to improve and get better and hopefully, stack some really good games.
Away from your team, what's your take on what Colorado, with 80 new guys, going to the runner-up and beating them at their place?
Yeah, I've first and foremost, and I mean this wholeheartedly, I've kind of put myself in this little shell and don't know a whole lot what's going on out in the world. And that's the truth. I have heard and people have told me what happened. I did see the final score. Look, that's college football, and I know you guys are going to hear me say that throughout the season. Like, holy cow, there's things that are going to occur that are going to be, that's the new norm, right? A team coming in with 82 new scholarship players and going in and beating TCU, right? A team that played for the national championship. I think there's going to be surprises like that throughout the season. You look at what Texas State was able to go to Baylor. Baylor was a 11-win team 2 years ago and go down there and beat them. Wyoming being Texas Tech. I showed our team. I'm probably the only one that watched the Norfolk State Virginia State game and the ending of that, because there were some great teachable moments in that. But look, I think that's a new norm with with what they're doing. Obviously, they're making some noise on a national level. Obviously, I want to also congratulate Coach Norvell and his staff on the big win. I got to see the score. Didn't get to watch any of it. I was watching Arkansas State film, but on their big win last night as well.
If you had, and obviously you're a big part of the scheduling, and if you could each year open, and no disrespect to Bethune, but open with that type of an opponent as opposed to an Ole Miss or a Mississippi State, would you like to have that first game where you can iron out some things before you play a big-time opponent, maybe in that second game, or does it just doesn't matter to you?
I've not thought about that. Someone had brought that to my attention prior and saying, is it good to have one of those that you get a chance to get a feel for what you're at? And look, I love playing the best of the best, and whenever they schedule it, they schedule it. I do have some say in the scheduling, but not as much as you want. It's a lot of it's with conference realignment and different things going different places, but it doesn't matter because, right, like if we're going to get a shot at, Ole Miss as a season opener, it's going to be their opener too. And so they're going to have some things they got to wrinkle. I think every team sits there and says, okay, it's unless you're playing a team that just played in week 0 and then they got an extra week to prepare, you don't want that. So I think, anytime you have the opportunity to play the first game, there's going to be some mistakes that are made. And really the opponent should never matter. So I don't have a say or a favor one way or the other.
Do you value make your biggest improvement between week 1 and 2?
Oh, I think that's where you can, I think being able to, back to Jonah's question, be able to see that stuff on film is huge for us because we can show it at practice. We can talk about an individual. I can talk about it till I'm blue in the mouth, but then I can say, okay, here it is actually going against somebody else, not just lining up against your teammate for 30 straight days. And I think that's when they can sit there and put it together and understand, hey, this is why we do the way we do it. This is why we ask of those things. This is why we're demanding that. And I certainly hope we see improvements every single week. I do think there's a big jump between week 1 and week 2, and hopefully for the Tigers and not the Red Wolves.
Seth Morgan was named Conference Player of the Week, especially for is that competition? I assume he's the guy already, and that's pretty much good football. How happy are you with just what you've seen from him since he's been here and obviously his performance?
Yeah, pleased with Seth, obviously. Right, with field goal kickers, we only want to talk about their makes, and obviously he's done a nice job with the extra points and then the field goals. And it starts with the snap, the hold, and the kick. And but yeah, glad that he's here, and obviously pleased with that. And then we got to see Tristan Vandenberg on the kickoffs and some of his strong legs. I think he was, I don't know what the number of touchbacks was, but a good number of touchbacks, and he's capable of hitting longer ones as well. But yeah, Seth's our field goal and extra point kicker for the most part, and Tristan obviously did a fantastic job on kickoffs as well.
One of the cool stories on the team this year, I think, is Darius Coffey. When he initially came in as a freshman, he's on the defensive side, playing safety, has been kind of moved around, dealing with injuries. All of a sudden this year, he comes back his junior year, and he's back on as a safety with the defense. 4 tackles, sack in the game. What are your thoughts on just – are you proud of him and what he did and just his story, I guess? Yeah,
so, in Darius Coffey, I talked about him for a couple hours right now. Young man I recruited. He was actually a high school quarterback. Originally committed to Ole Miss, okay, as a high school quarterback. Recruited him and able to get him here. And then it came down between us and Duke on signing day. And there's some controversy there because at one point there was a couple letters of intent signed and all that stuff. And he's got a wonderful family. His father's in the military, and a lot of respect for him, a high-ranking officer. And all that being said, when Darius came here, he said, hey, I want to play in the defense, I think. And we actually started him off as a corner, all right? And, he did some really good things and said, hey, you're going to playing quarterback to corner. It's a growing, it's going to take some time. And if anybody remembers, he actually went before the portal even existed, I think, a few years ago, he actually went in the portal for about 4 hours. And the only way I found out was an email. And then 2 hours after that email came out, him and I were sitting down face to face, and he just said, Coach, I want the opportunity to play running back. I didn't know how to tell you. And that I said, man, I got to work on our relationship. And he was a running back for us, dealt with some injuries, played some, and then even the spring 2 years ago, you guys were like, man, this is the next great running back. And then this past offseason, we had to sit down and say, all right, it's time for you to figure this thing out. What do you want to do? And for us, and being able to play him at that kind of that safety star position, he's smart, he's tough. We've seen him do some stuff on special teams, but kind of come full circle now. And Darius has grown into his role. I have high expectations for him, but very, very happy because he's a great young man, intelligent, works hard. Anybody that's ever been around him, he's just a joy to be around. And obviously, then when you see a guy like that then have success on the field, it really makes you happy.
This isn't a new thing for Memphis. I mean, you look at Dylan Parham and Bunsen. So, as a coaching staff, how are you guys able to kind of figure out, well, this guy, just move those pieces around the way you guys do?
Frank, it's interesting because I go back to this, and Dylan Parham's a great, let's use him as a perfect example, all right? Dylan Parham came here as a 243-pound tight end, okay? After a month, we moved to the defensive line. My thought process is, and Dylan Parham's a mature, smart young man, if that had happened this day and age, he probably would have said, hey, I'm going somewhere else to play tight end. Probably would have transferred from the university. Then at defensive line, okay, if it didn't work out there, and the defensive line coach after 4 months says, I don't think you play defensive line for us, and then an O-line coach comes and says, you got to come play O-line, then for sure you may have lost that young man, because who the hell wants to play offensive line, right? Especially at 260 pounds at the time. It's not like it's a glorious position. No offense to offensive linemen, I love them, but so being able to stick with it even before the portal days allowed that guy to grow in his position, no different than in Darius Coffey. And so I don't want to backtrack on that question, but I don't know how often we're going to continue to get guys moved around, right? There's a player that's no longer with us that came here as a walk-on quarterback, 214-pound quarterback, and then was an all-conference tight end, right? We've had some all-conference tight ends that moved to tackles and playing in the NFL at various spots in college football. So all that being said, credit to the coaches. They're the ones, not me, that do a nice job of developing guys and putting them in the right spots. But that's going to be harder and harder to do, because I think as soon as somebody says, hey, go play this position and generally what happens is, you start further away from the ball and they move you closer, and I always say it's like the least athletic you are. Hey, we're going to move you closer to the ball. And, it's one of those deals. But credit to all the coaches before me and everybody else around that's done a nice job of developing those guys.
But to that, even with the transfer portal in the mix, can you kind of lean on your track record? Some of these position groups, it worked out for a lot of these guys.
We can try. Maybe I can point to Frank's great article about, hey, the transition, how it's worked. But it's getting harder and harder. But, yes, we have had that discussion and shown guys, hey, this can benefit you if you come do this, right? This can, playing this position, we'll be able to move it around. Easier said than done, but, yes, we certainly have had a track record here at the university.